AG slams search and rescue efforts by the Defense Force. Plus, the latest from the Frank Smith trial.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Jared Higgs. Topping news tonight, 1 week after the six-seater aircraft piloted by Byron Ferguson plunged into waters off western New Providence. It took 18 volunteers who got together today and explored the area by boat to find parts of the missing plane. However, Ferguson remains missing. It was an emotional scene at the Harbor Patrol Unit as members of the pilot's family reacted to the discovery. Jillian Gray has the details.
Just 1 week after Byron Ferguson's plane went down in waters off Nirvana Beach, a team of 18 volunteer scuba divers found parts of that ill-fated flight just a few feet away from where it crashed.
Just look at me, there's nothing there, I swear to God. They shut down the lights and then everything is just gone.
Just 1 week after Byron Ferguson's plane went down in waters off Nirvana Beach, a team of 18 volunteer scuba divers found parts of that ill-fated flight just a few feet away from where it crashed. Ferguson's wife, mother, and two brothers awaited the boat's arrival at the Police Force Harbor Patrol Unit. It was there that they became emotional once they boarded and saw firsthand parts of the missing six-seater Piper Aztec.
What did they do, man? What did they do to my brother?
While authorities have not yet confirmed that it is Ferguson's plane that crashed last week, divers say parts were found just 600 feet from where the plane is believed to have crashed.
It was 40 minutes that the first person went, I see it, about 80 feet, and it was 600 feet from the original pin. And I mean, you could see the beach. Yeah, I could swim to the beach. That's how close it is.
Head Knowles appealed on social media for volunteers to join search efforts. The boat departed Montague Beach at 11:45 this morning. Divers hit the water at 12:34. Minutes later, they made their discovery, documenting it on social media.
Here's the pieces that we found so far. Before everybody says that I'm inconsiderate, I've already spoken to Anya, and she is fully aware. And I already had my cry out session. We are still looking for the actual cabin we found. So it seems to be like pieces of the nose and the wing. Here's the battery coming up. And very heavy.
Authorities' search and rescue efforts have been heavily criticized over the past week. Some people questioned why they called off the search for the night after spotting the plane late Thursday. Meanwhile, the Ferguson family has slammed poor communications from those involved in search efforts. Co-founder of Head Knowles, Gina Knowles, said after today, she too has questions.
They did actually search, they would have found it. Because
I'd like to find out who the divers was who went in the water.
Yeah, if divers actually went in the water, I would like to know who it was, because I want to know if they did indeed go in the water, if they just went in the water and sat down and did this. Because I mean, we have enough people on our forces to do the same thing we did. 12. We had 12 guys.
This volunteer search team came together just last night. They went out 2 by 2 with snorkels and scuba tanks. Angela Robinson, a diver for 4 years, was the first to spot the debris.
Wow.
He said if they, with their limited equipment, could find the plane, why couldn't trained authorities?
He could have found what he found on probably a week later, snorkeling at the surface. I feel as if it was some concerted effort from the with divers. Something more could have been done initially at the time of the accident.
As the boat carrying parts of the plane proceeded to Montague Beach to meet the family, police officers intercepted the vessel and escorted them to the Harbor Patrol Unit on Bay Street. However, Byron Ferguson has not yet been found. Knowles said she feels for the family and will continue to search for the father of two for his family's sake.
I think that if I am a wife and a mother, I only could feel out for how Anya feels, for how Mrs. Ferguson feels, as well as I'm very close with my brothers. I would not be settled until I find Byron. That's how I am. I explained to Anya, I will continue to put in my 100% full efforts.
Knowles said they are planning to go back out and welcome all volunteers. Reporting for our News, I'm Julian Gray.
Well, as volunteers were in the water searching for the wreckage, Attorney General Carl Bethel was in the Senate slamming search and rescue efforts. He said it was unimaginable that authorities would leave the crash site after spotting the plane, and civil aviation's efforts are hampered when they have to rely on another agency that is unmotivated. The AG says officials must ensure that whatever error or procedural misstep happened in the past is never repeated, because the damage that is being done to the families involved and psyche of the nation is simply unacceptable. Bonnie Toot reports.
Attorney General Carl Bethel says it boggles the mind and is unimaginable that Defense Force officers would leave the crash site last Thursday after spotting the six-seater Piper Aztec piloted by Byron Ferguson after it plunged into waters off Nirvana Beach. Bethel said whenever there is a water landing, the Civil Aviation Department has to rely on the efforts of another agency, usually the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. He suggested the challenge comes in when that agency is unmotivated and not sensitized to the nature of the job.
See, the difficulty is, because it's on the marine side, then an unmotivated entity, an entity that is not sensitized to that particular job, is more, it's sensitized to catching smugglers, catching human traffickers, catching poachers, defense.
In the days following the crash, the Ferguson family and members of the public expressed outrage over how the search for the missing pilot and the plane were handled. Bethel says he shares that concern and noted there was a similar and equally distressing experience when a plane carrying 6 people went down in Andros on January 17th.
Because this is the second time now, and I'm only going by what I heard. They saw a piece of wreckage, they say. They left the site. But it boggles the mind, if that is so. If that is so. It is unimaginable. Okay, so if I feel that way about something like this, if my colleagues opposite and here, who sit beside me, and I see Senator Henfield particularly, if we feel as a body that about a circumstance like that, how much worse does a family feel?
National Security Minister Marvin Dames has spoken out in defense of Defense Force officers, asserting that search efforts are not black and white. However, the Attorney General called for the Marine unit of the Defense Force to be sensitized to the urgency families feel in tragic situations like this one, so that they are motivated to leave no stone unturned.
For this aspect of civil intervention into some crisis, perhaps there's a need for stronger sensitization of the Marine unit of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force to ensure that the sense of urgency that a family would feel is also shared by those who are in the immediate vicinity, and that the principle of no stone left unturned until we find this thing must pervade.
The Attorney General says he does not believe there was ill will or malice, but
that, yes, even if it's only in finding a crash site, that is as important to the defense of the well-being of the Bahamian people, defending our well-being. Because how can we prevent such things happening unless we properly investigate each and every one, how can we show our true concern for the human beings involved if we call off the search at the slightest pretext? That cannot be the situation. It cannot happen.
Betho says steps must be taken to ensure this is never repeated.
I certainly, in my position, will reach out as quickly as is possible to my colleagues to see that whatever the error, whatever the procedural misstep, whatever the perfunctoriness of what may have happened in the past, that this will never, ever, ever be repeated again. Because plainly, the damage that is being done to families and to the psyche of this nation by these things is it's simply unacceptable.
Reporting for our News, I'm Vonik Tood.
Thanks, Monique. The controversy surrounding search and rescue efforts was raised in the Senate by opposition Senator Fred Mitchell, who expressed concern about how the plane crash has been handled by authorities over the past week. The former MP for Fox Hill says Ferguson and members of his family live in his old constituency, and a major concern for them has been poor communication from those handling the case.
But the issue they were talking about is, how do I get information? Right. How do I get information? And are the officials speaking with one voice? I was giving the example while you were off mic of the police. If there's a homicide, the police assign someone. They give you a name. They give you a telephone number. If you need any information, you call that person. And they tell you, today we did this, tomorrow we expect to do that. And then that's how these things should work. And it must be heart-wrenching.
Mitchell added that the Ferguson family should not be forced to communicate with authorities via media in such a sensitive manner.
And I know his family and all his brothers, I mean, and his wife are heartbroken over this. It's a very difficult time. And it's not a good thing to be having a public conversation about this in the press. And that's why it's all the more important for you to have just a point person who's dealing with this, because this is a really sensitive issue.
In other news, the Frank Smith bribery and extortion trial continued today, with the defense continuing its cross-examination of the case's lead investigator. Smith's defense attorney, Keith Knight, QC, spent the majority of the day grilling Superintendent Ewell Johnson on his role in the investigation. One of the early issues raised by the Jamaican attorney was whether call log evidence that was previously abandoned by the prosecution was prepared by Johnson. Johnson insisted under persistent questioning that he did not prepare the log and had only downloaded the document and printed it. The call log in question was withdrawn from the prosecution's evidence due to the fact that the columns in the log had been flipped. Asked by Knight if a call log in police custody has been modified, if that would amount to tampering of evidence, Johnson said, "No, sir." He added that if the call log was incorrect when it was received from BTC, he is not aware, and if it was modified later, he isn't aware of that either. Another issue put to the lead investigator concerned which documents he received from the Public Hospitals Authority. Initially stating that he got the contract between the PHA and Magic Touch from the PHA, Johnson admitted that was a mistake, and he actually got a copy of the contract from Hannah. He gave further evidence that former PHA Managing Director Herbert Brown did not wish to give a statement. As a result, Johnson says he didn't get a statement from a PHA official until January of 2018, when the trial was already underway. Pressed on whether he ascertained the validity of the contract, Johnson says he accepted its validity on face value. Turning to the resolution awarding the contract to Hannah's company, Knight went on to question if that document, which was signed in February 2016, was authorized prior to when Johnson first believed that Hannah went to Smith. Johnson responded yes, telling the court his information was that Hannah first approached Smith in March or April of 2016. As morning turned to afternoon, Knight went on to press Superintendent Johnson on whether he collected a signed statement from Hannah in relation to things she allegedly said in an addendum provided by the prosecution to the defense. Johnson responded no, prompting Knight to question whether that is the correct thing to do. Johnson responded, at this point, no. Following legal discussions between Knight, Crown Prosecutor Edward Jenkins, QC, and Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt, Knight asserted that he was at a disadvantage and wanted an opportunity to discuss certain issues with his legal team. The matter was adjourned until 10 a.m. on Friday morning, with Superintendent Johnson continuing his testimony. The prosecution's lead witness, Barbara Hannah, is also expected to take the stand. Smith, a former senator and member of parliament, is on trial facing 15 counts related to an allegation that he demanded payments from Hannah for helping her obtain a cleaning contract. Still to come on our news, Morton Salt staff take a strike vote. Plus, the second annual Grand Bahama Tech Summit underway. That's coming up when our news returns.